Now, the validity of an expression has or does not depend upon the problem that it tries to solve. Okay, for example, you might say, okay, so let's say you made a mistake, and you ended up writing this expression instead: area equals 2 times length plus width, right? Now, this is not the formula of area. This is the formula of perimeter, right? But it is still a valid expression, okay? For the computer who does not understand what an area is and what a perimeter is, unless you tell them properly, for a computer, this is a perfectly valid expression. It's a valid expression, okay? So an expression is valid regardless of whether it's correct or not. Okay, the correctness of an expression has no bearing on the validity of the expression. Okay, so a valid expression, an expression is a valid combination of variables. Okay, a valid expression is anything that can be evaluated. Anything that can be evaluated is considered to be a valid expression. Okay, so to summarize, an expression is nothing but a combination of variables and literals. Okay, so things like 5 times a, where a must be defined earlier. Okay, a must exist. So, or things like, so this is a literal, this is an operator, and this is a variable, right? So similarly, you can have things like m times x plus let's say 5. Okay, again, this is a combination of variables such as m and x, right? These are variables. You also have literals, which is 5, and you have operators, multiplication and addition, right? Okay, so a variable is a combination of variables, literals, and operators. Now you can also have no literals or no variables, right? So you can have things like an expression like m times x plus c. That's valid. Okay, that's a perfectly valid uh, expression. Okay, you can also have 1 times 2 plus 3. That's also valid. That's valid as well. Okay. Now, when we talked about assignment, we said that there are three general forms, right? Three general forms of assignment. So number one is variable variable equals literal. Number two, variable equals another variable, right? And number three, variable equals expression, right? So the third case, variable equals expression, obviously the same rules apply, which means you only can have one variable here, right? A single variable and nothing else. You cannot have anything other than a variable. Uh, and the expression will be evaluated first, right? Will be evaluated first. And then its value would be stored in the variable. An expression would be evaluated first, and then its value would be stored in the variable. Now, this particular rule creates some interesting expressions or interesting statements in programming. Consider this situation, okay? So let's say you have a variable a which is equal to, let's say, 5. Okay? So you create new variable a which is equal to 5. Now, what the next statement does is something like this. You say a equals a plus 1. Okay? What do you think this statement does? What do you think this statement does? And the answer is, remember, the right hand side of this assignment is an expression which is evaluated first, right? So this a plus 1 is evaluated. What happens when an expression is evaluated? You essentially replace the variable by its value, right? So this a is replaced by its value, which is 5. This 5 plus 1 evaluates to 6, and this 6 is stored into a. So previously, the value stored in a was 5. Now it's 6. Now it's 6. Sorry. If you think of a variable as a box called a, initially it had 5. Now you added 1 to it. You added 1 to this, and now it is it is 6. Okay? Now, one quick note again. Folks who are from a non-programming background, which is to say that this is their first programming language or first programming course. If this is the first time you're learning programming, this thing might seem weird, right? You This thing right here, an expression such as a equals a plus 1, or yeah, a statement like this, this seems weird, right? Because if you think in terms of algebra, this is not possible. This is never possible, right? But this is one of the situations where a variable in Python, or variable in any programming language for that matter, differs from a variable in algebra. Okay, a variable in algebra, in algebra you can never say things like x equals x plus 1. That This equation has no solution. So this is an invalid in algebra. Okay, this is invalid. There is no x for which x equals x plus 1, because this is an equation, right? So what you're trying to say is there is some number x which is equal to itself plus 1. So it's not possible, right? Let's say x is 5. This essentially means 5 equals 6. That does not make any sense. So without confusing you further, this, right, a equals a plus 1, it may not make any sense in algebra, but this is valid in Python. This is valid in Python. Valid in Python. Why? Because the equal to in algebra versus the equal to in Python, they are fundamentally different operations. Okay, they're fundamentally different operations. Here, the equal to stands for assignment, whereas in algebra, the equal to stands for equality. There is a difference. Okay, an assignment is you assigning some value to a variable, which is why the expression a equals a plus 1, or the statement a equals a plus 1, it's perfectly valid, because all you're doing is calculating the value of a plus 1 and then assigning the value back to a, which is why it is valid. This is not equality. Okay, this is not testing if a is equal to a plus 1 or not. That is not the case, right? This is assignment, which is why this is a valid statement in Python. And indeed, we will look at statements like these later on when we learn about loops. Okay, this is an extremely common type of statement, which is used a lot in something called loops, which is repetitive code. Okay, code that repeats itself. Uh, but For now, just remember this, that this is a valid expression. Okay, so you can have a variable in both sides of the assignment. So you can have the same variable to the left of the assignment and the right of the assignment. In fact, let me clear the screen a little bit. In fact, this is also a valid assignment, a valid statement. A equals a, perfectly valid statement. It does not do anything. Okay, it does not make any sense, maybe, right? You're assigning the value of a back to a without any change, right? Which means a does not change. Okay, it's it's not a logically sound statement, but it is a valid statement. Okay, it is a valid statement, and that drives home the point about expressions. An expression is something that is valid and not necessarily logically sound. Okay,